Hi, I'm Kenny Florian. I'm a former mixed martial arts fighter, and now I am a podcaster. I'm a commentator. I do play-by-play, or I do, sorry, color commentary for the PFL on ESPN, and still a martial artist and enjoying it.
Nice. So would you describe yourself as a Bitcoiner as well?
I definitely would, qualify myself as a Bitcoiner. I started being interested, I guess, in Bitcoin back in like 2016, 2017. And it's been an interesting process. At first, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is an interesting technology where I feel I can make some money. And that honestly was my first kind of thing. That was kind of my first interest. And then from there, it kind of snowballed into uh, something that actually changed me, which is pretty interesting. And I found, I think, a lot of parallels and a lot of positivity from being in the space and learning about Bitcoin, similar to being involved with, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to start and other martial arts.
So what did that early adoption look like for you? How did you find out about Bitcoin, and then what led you to keep learning about it?
I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had a buddy of mine who was pretty entrepreneurial and was involved in just a variety of things. And he told me about this thing called Bitcoin, and kind of loosely introduced me to it. Seemed very interesting. And I considered investing for a long time, and like so many other people who get into Bitcoin, I think I was like, I'm probably late, and Bitcoin was just so cheap back then. But I was like, I think I missed the boat on it. Should I do it? Is this a thing that's going to be something? And I hesitated for a long time, and I remember kind of forgetting about it a little bit, and going back to it and looking at the price, and it had gone up significantly. And at the time, I think I had a few different real estate properties, and was kind of had my money tied up, but still like was considering it. Decided to hold off, and finally, I think in like either late 2016 or early 2017, I kind of made the plunge, and bought some Bitcoin, and yeah, just haven't looked back since, and I've learned so much. I feel like, um, over the last few years, but especially probably since the pandemic, I kind of really focused in on listening to as much as possible and consuming as much as I could from podcasts and different materials on the internet, and just really looking into the space and trying to understand it the best that I could. And just found it extremely interesting, and kind of went down that rabbit hole, and definitely still in it today.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where the pandemic really ramped up how much time I had to dedicate. Not just, I won't say just learning, because a lot of it was like entertainment based. I would just be on,
Yeah,
Clubhouse or Twitter, just talking to Bitcoiners, and
right.
that really kind of pulled me down the rabbit hole a little bit. So, do you think it was the pandemic or the kind of like halving cycle and election that propelled the price, or how do you figure that price action plays in that we get every 4 years?
It's hard in any domain to kind of point to just one or two things. I do feel like, it's a little bit more complicated than, say, just the halving or the pandemic. I think in a lot of ways, I think, a lot of people are educating themselves way more on this. A lot of people had a lot more time because of the pandemic. But I think, yeah, I think that with just kind of the complex nature of investments and money and all that stuff, I think that people are understanding more and more about that stuff. And I also think that, you know, the information on Bitcoin is becoming more readily available. And of course, with the internet, information travels so quickly, and everything from social media to YouTube to all the things that are out there. I feel like, it's created this kind of perfect storm. But I think you're right as far as some of the main factors, no question about it, that I think the pandemic, the election, has kind of created this impetus for people to come out and really learn about what's going on out there. And I think that in many ways, the various governments themselves have been the best forms of advertisements in a lot of ways, just with the way a lot of things are happening out there in the world. I feel like, whether it's authoritarian regimes or authoritarian policies, I think it's getting people to think a little bit deeper and a little bit harder about what's going on out there. And I think at the root of that, people are finding out it is a lot about money. And, when you think about, things like where you live and what job you have and how much money you're bringing in, and when those things are kind of in question here with the pandemic, whether you were allowed to work or not, I think it forces people to think in more creative ways and to think in deeper ways to try to solve their issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to look to other sources of income.
Yeah,
I've noticed just in reading, if you look at other hyperinflation events in history, and I'm not saying that we're in hyperinflation, but
sure.
if you there have been around 50 of them throughout history, and if you look, most of those societies devolve into like widespread degenerate gambling, just people basically losing hope and trying to find a way, just a long shot, to make money to stay afloat. So it became interesting to me. I don't know if it was just my experience of it, or if the pandemic really put like millions of young people onto Robinhood and platforms where they could trade instantly.
Right. Well, I know I had a lot of friends that, whether they had a jiu-jitsu academy or not, or were kind of, had their own businesses or whatever, and those were shut down. I know a lot of people that turned to day trading, and some very successfully. But yeah, I think that this definitely, pushed people to look for other ways to try to make money and be creative, and for better or worse. And I think, people finding out about Bitcoin and looking to, looking to kind of understand how money works and what's going on in the world. I think it's going to take, it's an even longer process, I think, but I think we're getting there and it's happening. And, based on, inflation and everything that's going on out there, I think, we're finally kind of getting those resources and that information out there for people to learn about Bitcoin and find out about why it's so important, why it is so game changing.
Yeah. So you made an interesting point that I agree with. I think, which is that the government's mishandling of money is what propels a lot of people to find Bitcoin. And maybe not what gives it its value, but maybe something that accelerates its adoption is something like, whatever you want to call them, governments or these regimes debasing everybody's property. So what I wonder is there a world in your mind for Bitcoin to exist, even if the government's behaving? Like, let's say they don't print money for the next 4 years. What do you think would happen?
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, I think it's hard to for humans in general to not be corrupted in some way, shape, or form. And that anytime someone gets a certain amount of power, they can be exploited. And, whether it's not happening or whether, the potential is there, I think the most important thing is that is trust, right? And Bitcoin is based on trust and truth, and you know, having things that can be verified, and taking out the human element. It is that human element where things can be corrupted. And I think people are finding out that centralization and anytime you get a group of individuals together, that things can be compromised. Bitcoin is one of those things that takes that out of it. It is not centralized. It is not up to the decision making of humans. And far as like, people printing more Bitcoin, or handing out more Bitcoin to people, that is all done by math, and handled by the Bitcoin network, and the miners, and the exchange, and all that stuff of people. People are deciding whether to buy it or not, and people are selling it and things like that. But it's not it's not like the government is handling any of that money, and it's not like it only available to a few people. It's available to anyone who is willing to buy it, and be a part of it. So I think that shift alone is huge, and I think it's the beginning of something much, much bigger.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think we know the implications of this yet by any means. And I'm not talking about the future price, because I think that Bitcoin's value for the most part lays like outside of its US dollar price. Although I will admit I probably wouldn't have found it if it wasn't so expensive and didn't become increasingly more so. I think
Right.
like people come for that number go up, but you end up staying just for the Bitcoin, because it's immune to governance, and because it's doesn't rely on trust, and no one can debase the amount that I have. That's my property, and I would say that's also the way I think of it anyway, is that's the only property that I have that really can't be taken from me or taxed, or if I didn't let it. So I was wondering how you think of Bitcoin, more as an asset or a property or energy, or how do you define it for yourself?
Gosh, I think what makes it so interesting is the fact that it is many of those things. It is a form of monetary energy. It is a form of digital property. It is something that is, transferable. I could send it to you. You could send it to me. You can exchange in it. It is something that is immune, as you said, to external factors or to human decision making. It is highly protected, and outside of the reach of any group or government. So it's a fascinating concept, and I think for the first time in human history, you can actually have something that is truly yours, that can't be messed with. Even our real estate, our property, can be messed with, can be taken over, whether it's eminent domain, or even some individual who decides to walk in your home and try to take something, whether they want to steal your car, or steal something that's inside your home. Bitcoin is one of those things. So long as you know what you're doing with your wallet and all that stuff, it will remain on the network no matter what. No one can go into Bitcoin and take it from you necessarily. They can do something to you, and try to take it to you, but take it from you. But in many cases, as Michael Saylor says, no one can go into your town, kill everybody in it, and steal your gold. They don't get a chance to do that. No one can go in and just take your Bitcoin from you. They can threaten you, they can kill you, but they actually can't get away with the Bitcoin if you don't want them to. So I think that alone makes it really interesting. And I think that it really is this microcosm of capitalism, and everything from the miners to the network, and how it's sold and how people view the value. I think it's, maybe the only free market that we actually have.
Yeah, and I think even if it's not there yet. Maybe some people would argue. I think it's the only thing that potentiates a free market, because like in order to
Yeah,
have a
I
free
think that's
market,
fair.
yeah, like in order to have one, you have to have unstoppable transactions, right? Uh,
Yeah.
as it may sound bad, but for better or for worse, like people have to be able to transact for things that don't necessarily align with the law. And I'm not really advocating for that, right? But I don't know, especially after this year, I'm pretty confident in saying that I don't trust the government to have my best interests in mind. So I guess the follow up question to that would be: has Bitcoin influenced maybe your politics or your interest in politics in any way?
I don't know. I think that I've always kind of been interested in politics, I guess, but in some ways it almost, in some ways it influences, and in some ways it's almost like you don't care if you're involved with Bitcoin in some ways,
Yeah.
because they don't get a choice in the matter. Of course, there's going to be certain things that they're going to try to do, and that they may do, but I don't know. I think that's what kind of makes Bitcoin so interesting. But I think it is one of those things that is universal, no matter where you're from and what kind of government you have. I think that you do realize that much of the root of what's going on, as far as a lot of the decision making, a lot of the control is happening because of these governments, and their willingness to try to control the money, and a lot of the big institutions and corporations and banks and central banks and are really have a huge amount of control out there. And I think Bitcoin is starting to take that away from them, and give power back to the people, I think, in a lot of ways. And um, you know, I hope it's one of those things that will help get rid of a lot of the silliness in politics. I think if Bitcoin is able to grow even more, I think that it's one of those things that hopefully will help solve a lot of the issues that's happening out there. But I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think it is in some ways outside of politics. Like it seems to me that like developments in Bitcoin and surely the network are kind of orthogonal to politics. Like we always compare Bitcoin to US dollars, but there's no mention of US dollars in the Bitcoin code. Like it has
Right.
nothing to do with US dollars. I think they don't have any effect truly on how this in the grand scheme of things works. So if it's outside of the law in that way, I think it also produces, I mean, wonderful solutions to certain problems we've had in society. But I think that's also why when you go on to something like Bitcoin Twitter, or I don't know if you've spent any time there, but Bitcoiners, like certain groups of them tend to devolve into like anarcho, like you know what I mean? Like really anti-government sentiment and like
Yes.
hardcore or they think they're libertarian. I don't know if anyone really wants to, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do when you get sick? But like, I don't,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of opens up a whole can of worms. That's pretty fun to think about. Like,
Yeah. For sure.
yeah. So how, if at all, just recently I found out and was writing about Jorge Masvidal's partnership or namesake Game Bred Fighting Championship is giving Bitcoin to, fight of the night, submission of the night. He's giving them hardware wallets with Bitcoin on it, and I've always been an advocate for fighters to get paid in Bitcoin, but now on some scale, it's actually happened. So, have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, it's awesome. And kind of my mind was blown when I heard the news. Yeah, I think that, and listen, I think a lot of people, no matter what job you do, takes pride in what they do, and people believe that they work very hard to earn their money. But fighters, especially, I think that, the lifestyle of a fighter is a brutal one. I remember training 3 times a day and, watching what I eat. And, you know, every single day that you come home or every training session, you're sore as hell, you're beat up mentally, spiritually, physically sometimes. And then that's not even the fight. Like, you still need to go out there and fight and perform. And there's so much involved in that process, whether it's, investing in your training and getting the equipment you need, or, flying out to wherever you need to fly out to train with whoever you need to train with in order to get better, or, bringing out your coaches, or, paying your coaches, or, there's a lot of expenses in that process. To do it now, and earn dollars, you better be making a hell of a lot of money. And the reality is most fighters aren't making a hell of a lot of money. And I love the idea that you can make a hard money and it can also expand over time, that you can put that money away. You can have that money. You could actually put it into a savings, like, right, the Bitcoin network. And 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you'll have a hell of a lot more than what you did before. And I think this is an issue with a lot of different people, but if you're working your ass off to make money and it's worth less than what it was before, what are you doing? What's going on? And I think that that's the beauty of Bitcoin. And I think it's the perfect thing for a lot of people, but I think especially someone like a professional mixed martial arts fighter who, if you're doing it right, you're literally killing yourself in a lot of ways to become as good as possible.
Yeah, and even, any sort of like career that's paid in fiat money right now, if you didn't get like a 4, 5, 6% pay increase, you got a pay cut this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. But most people, I'm not sure if they're aware of it. And that's kind of the sad thing, is that it is this, secret way of stealing from you. And most people, I don't think, well, maybe not most people, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think a lot of people aren't really aware of those implications. And I think that, for a lot of people, it's scary to do something different. It's scary to be in charge of your own life. A lot of people, whether it's because of, following certain dogma or following a certain mode of being, they don't want to look outside of that. They just want to say, yeah, inflation's happening, but what am I going to do about it? I don't know about this Bitcoin thing. How do I know it's not going to be worth zero, in a couple of years, or whatever it is, whatever the argument is. And people are kind of lazy and don't want to do the research and don't want to look into it. And I think that that's kind of the worst part. So, and any of my friends that are either in the mixed martial arts space or otherwise, I always tell them to do the work and learn as much as possible about it, what how it differs from the current system, and how you can kind of take charge and actually put money away for the future. Is right now that's just not happening. And I think it's what also encourages people to go out and get a lot of shit that they don't really need. It's like, well, if this money is worth less, let me just spend it on stupid stuff that I actually don't need. And it's just, kind of, you're just kind of digging a hole for yourself, which is, not ideal, especially during these times.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to give the Fed the benefit of the doubt, in that, oh, some of these repercussions are just like unanticipated, like just give them, a little bit longer leash to print a little more money and it'll help solve these problems. It's like, well, this has been going on for 200 years. Like at this point,
right.
If you understand how inflation works, it's insidious. Like, it is taxation. It's stealing your time. Literally every second that you spend working is being reeled back in by someone else. which is unfortunate. I mean, whether and to what extent we should be obligated to pay for the things we enjoy as citizens can be debated, but I don't think
Yeah,
that I don't think that inflation is the way. And I think Bitcoin proves that you can have a finite amount of monies and it's enough to like fund an entire system, if not like an entire globe of economy. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, and the fact that we're capped just ensures that whatever time you spent, you know, in the gym working for that big paycheck after you win your fight, I mean, you're gonna keep that paycheck. It's not gonna be debased when you're done. Like it's
Well,
worthwhile to save.
absolutely. And it's all out there in the open. You know how much Bitcoin is out there. You know how much
Yeah.
Bitcoin you own. What the value is and whatever currency you use. And we don't know how many dollars are out there. Even some, for those gold bugs out there, you don't really know how much gold is out there or how much gold is still in the earth or out in the universe or whatever it is. So with Bitcoin, you get that absoluteness. You get that certainty and that truth, which you can't get anywhere else, really.
Yeah, it's auditable, right? You
Yes.
can, anyone that runs a node can verify. You know, you don't trust Coinbase.com to tell you how many Bitcoin
Mhm.
are. You know, verify it.
Yes.
Eventually, I think all roads lead to that, and I think it, like we were talking about the shoe horse kind of like sorry, the horseshoe of like the education cycle earlier, and how it kind of leads you back to self sovereignty and like self edifying practices of find out what exchange is the best. Don't just go to the first commercial. Like you try out a bunch at first,
Mhm.
right? But then you kind of settle on your Bitcoin strategy and you consistently try to improve it, at least in my experience. So my question
Yeah,
would be, what's your Bitcoin
absolutely. Sorry, go
strategy?
ahead.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
ask what,
So
yeah.
I have I guess a couple different strategies and some that are I'm adjusting as we speak, but yeah, so I definitely have my own Bitcoin that I hold. I have other stuff that I guess is being I have in my retirement that's not under my control right now, but that will be under my control. And I think it's important for people to figure out ways to be in charge of their assets, truly be in charge of their assets. And I think Bitcoin helps you to kind of understand that. And yeah, I think that I guess it's a lot like martial arts where you can learn stuff from people, um, and but at the end of the day, you're going to find out what's true and what's true for everyone, but also what's true for you and the way that you think and the way that you live your life and the way that your body is or whatever it is. I think that um, you know it is one of those things that is a constant learning process, and I think it is evolving in that space. But I do think that being in charge of your own Bitcoin, whether it's running your own node and all that stuff, is stuff that people should look into. And I don't think, I mean, and that's why even in this, I guess, relatively early stage, I do think it's one of those things that is going to take the power out of the banks. The banks aren't going to be able to be in charge of your life. To think that you need to ask permission for an entity that's holding your money, that's investing your money, and you have to ask them for permission to send your money somewhere is going to be a ridiculous thought, in only a few years from now. I would think so. It's already a ridiculous thought, but people are so used to, paying wire fees or, asking if they're allowed to, take out something over $10,000 or whatever it is. It's it's crazy, but this is the world we're in, and I think that um, questioning questioning what's happening right now and questioning yourself are all things that are important in any aspect of your life, whether it's martial arts or, are you living the life that you want to live? And is this something that you can control or isn't it? So I don't know. I think we're living in interesting times right now. I think Bitcoin is changing so much.
Yeah, and
I don't know if I answered your question, but I kind of was all over the place, but
that's all right. We're just covering a little bit of everything here. So I like this idea, and again, if you end up on the Bitcoin Twitter or something, you can get kind of like a violent opposition to other ideas. Um,
yeah,
yeah, like I don't agree that there's like a marketplace of competing things that are trying to be Bitcoin. Like people, and we don't have to get into that, but there's a fundamental difference between Bitcoin and all these other altcoins, right? And that is that those are all susceptible to a majority or a small minority governing your funds, right? So there's a
yes,
fundamental like difference in the guarantee of property rights between those things. Um, However, that doesn't mean just because there's one stable protocol that is Bitcoin that is a one size fits all solution for everybody, right? Like even as you mentioned, you have some Bitcoin that you keep in like a hardware wallet, and you have some that is money you could not allocate to a hardware wallet. Therefore, it's in a retirement account. For institutional buyers, the solution may be a Bitcoin ETF in Canada. Like
right,
there's
right.
so there's how do you think about all these, if you will, like derivatives or other, even banks, like Vast Bank actually will custody Bitcoin for you. That's a US chartered bank that will
Yeah,
hold your Bitcoin for it, which seems super ironic and like crazy,
right.
right? But
yeah,
but to me, that's still better than no Bitcoin. If
yeah. I agree. I think it's always best to hold your own Bitcoin, of course. I think that goes without saying, but I think it comes down to, um, you know, how much do you trust yourself and how much do you trust other entities, and what's the history of that trust, and how long have they been in business, and what are they doing, and what are you doing to question your own process, and what are you willing to take charge of. I think on the other hand of things, to be like, okay, well, I'm going to take charge of it and I'm going to hold my own Bitcoin. And now you're reckless with it and you end up losing it anyway. It's like, so
yeah,
you have to educate yourself on it and be prepared for those steps. And I think, kind of what I've been doing, I've been slowly just taking more and more control over my Bitcoin, and plan on doing more of that in the future. So I think that it's a process, and also I imagine things technologically are going to advance and change over time as well. So open to those possibilities, but I think at the end of the day, owning your own Bitcoin is crucial, and being a part of the space. I mean, there's some people who are like, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin mining instead of Bitcoin. I don't know. And as far as how they look at other altcoins and shit coins or whatever you want to call it. I think people a lot of times blindly just look at how much money can I make on this, and that's it.
yeah,
That's the only thing on their
yeah,
mind, and that's kind of how I got into Bitcoin. But the reality is that Bitcoin changes you as you learn as you learn about it more and more. You realize its importance, and its global importance, and how it really can change humanity for the better. But it is a process, and I hope that people just keep learning more about it.
yeah. Like I think, like for example, when I was really trying to evangelize for Bitcoin, just because I was excited about it, like I couldn't not talk to people I knew about it, people that didn't know anything
Yeah,
about it. Um, like at Jackson Wink, for example, the first question a fighter like was likely to ask me was like, how fast can I double my money? And it's just like every time, just how quickly can you double my money? It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not that. It's not. That's not what we're talking about here. Haven't you seen what's happening in El Salvador? And they just like don't
Right.
give a fuck. But
Well, it's the same
yeah,
thing. It's like when someone comes into, my jujitsu school or whatever, they're like, I can't wait. I want to sign up. I want to learn about jujitsu, or let's say I want to be a mixed martial artist. This is great. When can I get my black belt? Or when can I be world champion? You're like, no, 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 no. There's a lot of things that need to happen here. This is a complicated process of like really investing time, and you got to be into this. It's, people want a quick fix.
yeah,
People want to do the 6-minute abs and and just get the perfect body straight away without the work. But yeah, I think learning about Bitcoin and understanding its implications, I think, is huge. And maybe even finding out about what the current system is like first, then learning about Bitcoin. Whatever it is, it's not a quick process. It wasn't for me anyway. I'm maybe a slow learner, but it takes me time to really work through things and get a grasp on things, and once I get it, I usually get it. But it takes time, and it starts kind of with you got to have a passion for it. You got to have a genuine interest in it. It's got to go beyond just how much money I can make.
yeah. I think you probably solved what I should have asked those people, which is just like or told them just like let's see if you like this first. Like let me like, are you
Right.
interested in that? You know what I mean? So is your jujitsu school in Charlotte?
It's in Boston. I
Oh,
started
okay.
a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school with my brother Keith back in 2006, I think now, in
Oh wow.
Boston. And yeah, we run it. It's technically in Brookline, Massachusetts, and we've been running that for a little while now. I'm living in Charlotte, but now I'm just kind of, because I have so many other things going on. I've just been training at Lucas Lepri's gym here. I don't really have the time to teach as of right now because of work. So I'm just kind of being a student again and enjoying the process.
Nice. I was gonna
Yeah.
ask if your gym accepts Bitcoin or would consider accepting Bitcoin for
Oh
students.
my gosh, that would be amazing. I guess it's a deeper discussion. My brother and I have had our arguments, many arguments over Bitcoin. I've been trying to get him to. He owned Bitcoin at one point and sold a long time
Uh,
ago, unfortunately. So now it's kind of hard for him to be like, I had it when it was so cheap, and now I got to buy it back at like 50,000. Is that what you're telling me? I had, whatever it was. So I don't know. I would absolutely do it. I'm sure he would be down for accepting Bitcoin for sure. But yeah, pretty pretty interesting. But what I am doing to get back to teaching, I just kind of teach online, and I do online stuff. I'm releasing a jiu-jitsu instructional in the next couple weeks or so. But
oh really?
I do miss it. Yeah, so I still teach and stuff. I still enjoy that process and do seminars and stuff. But
What platform is the jujitsu coming
it
on?
I'm going to be
Everywhere?
using a platform called Teachable.
Hmm.
The Teachable platform. So that will be, I'll be starting a website and kind of doing like a fundamentals course, I guess, kind of anywhere from like your beginner student who already started jiu-jitsu to kind of your more advanced practitioner. But it's more a conceptual view of jiu-jitsu and how the different positions work. It's not necessarily like an instructional on learning a bunch of moves, but more
Yeah.
like if you're learning moves, this is how you can put it all together. This is how it actually works. So it's more a process of getting people to understand jiu-jitsu more than here's a bunch of moves. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think and I'm not, an expert jujitsu practitioner, but it is like the one martial art that I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I think it's
Yeah.
sustainable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
So one of the issues, not a huge issue, but I sometimes wonder if all I think there's like more ways to teach jujitsu than have been totally explored yet. And I don't mean just different personality types, but I
Yeah.
often get like this formulaic come in, you know, fraternize, stretch, and then like go through moves, and then like jujitsu's at the end. But for someone like me, I can't pay attention. Like when we're doing the moves, like I don't, you can show me a move 500 times and like I will remember nothing. Like I have to do it.
Right.
Like I have to do it. I
Right.
have to get in that scramble. I have to understand. Like I'm a tactile learner, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome that you have like a, kind of a new video platform way to go through these things.
Yeah, I think, like you said, a lot of people learn differently. And I think there's different approaches that kind of resonate with people. And I think it's important for people to, you can get a bunch of moves now with YouTube and all the different instructionals that are out there. There are literally millions and millions of techniques you can do. But I don't know if people understand why those moves work necessarily. I think it's more like put your hand here, do this, do that, and then hopefully he'll get flipped over, or do this, do that, and then you'll get a submission. And that's fine. Certain people, work well that way. But I think you kind of keyed in on something. You were talking about how you're a tactile learner. Well, I think most people are when it comes to jiu-jitsu. It's like jiu-jitsu doesn't care what you want to do. It only cares about what's available. And in order to see or feel what's available, you need to be feeling the interaction of the energy between you and your opponent. How do you get underneath someone's center of mass? How are you able to stop someone from coming up? Where do you place your body weight in order to control another human being? What are the control points of the different levers on the body and all those things? And I think from there, you can kind of be creative, and it allows the practitioner to be a little bit more creative in their process. Once they kind of understand generally how the body is controlled or how it works, then you can kind of take those techniques that or are going to learn and kind of plug it into this system or use these concepts to kind of help you along in your jiu-jitsu journey, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I was thinking about was the Lightning Network and how that could be implemented on a website like Flow or on your own platform. Because
yes,
I don't know, have you used the Lightning Network ever?
I haven't.
Okay. Well, it's the catch is obviously that it's instant, like it's instantaneous.
Yes.
So if you're streaming a podcast and someone says something hilarious on this live podcast or something, you can send them like 10
Tip them or
sats.
send them money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you can do whatever. And I think the quickest way people are going to get onboarded to this now is obviously through Twitter and through the Strike app. So if you haven't downloaded Strike app, I highly recommend it, because you can turn on tips on your Twitter and people will just send you Bitcoin.
I have it on my phone. I have the Strike app, but I haven't integrated
really?
into like the Twitter platform and stuff. But that's going to be my
Yeah.
next step. Okay. So, I guess you just do that on your laptop and then kind of plug it into your Twitter, or it does it automatically?
It hasn't rolled out for computer yet.
Oh, okay.
Like for
Okay.
iOS,
Gotcha.
like you just go to your edit profile on your Twitter and turn it on, and then you just kind of like tell everybody, and then everybody gets excited and sends you Bitcoin. It's great.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, I mean, if you think about, that whole process and how revolutionary that is, it's like, I don't know how many people. You can't just send 10 cents to someone these days, really, and it be instantaneous and them actually have that money. The fees to send money are ridiculous. And it seems like, Lightning Network is just changing the game altogether. And it's, I think that's another thing that's going to kind of bring people on to Bitcoin as well.
That's what's crazy about it to me too. There's also an option to just put a Bitcoin address, which, I mean, you should use different addresses for different periods of time. Don't keep a stable Bitcoin address just accumulating there. But what's interesting is like okay, it's like a trade-off. Like you have to get KYC'd for a Strike, but also the service that they're offering is like super revolutionary for the reasons you said. Like there's like no commission. It's not like Venmo or Cash App, where when I go to cash out, I have to like do some mental math so that I actually have, you know, the $300. I have to go like
Right.
$15 extra or something. It's like, no, it's all there. Like no one took any of my money. Like you paid
It,
like one Satoshi per byte for a routing fee that you don't even notice it. That's like an 11th of a penny.
it's unbelievable. And I mean, you think about, I mean, everything. I mean, Visa and all these other, banks. All these guys got to be shaking in their shoes because
Yeah.
they can't do it more efficiently. They can't do it faster. They can't do it cheaper. They're all going to have to get on board. It seems. I mean, I don't know. Really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, what's even wilder about it, and this is an area that I'm really excited and really need to like dive into, but I know it's going to be one of those huge time sucks. Is like if you run your own Lightning node and you open enough channels and you start routing payments, like you've just become Visa, like or MasterCard,
Right.
but better. Like you're literally just a money transmitter pseudonymously in your apartment or whatever, just wiring money all over the world. It's crazy.
It's wild. It really is. It's amazing.
Yeah, so what kind of like business solutions do you see coming from Bitcoin and Lightning? Like do you see any of these for yourself and what you want to build for yourself going forward?
I've talked about, I'm about to release this Jiu Jitsu instructional in the next couple weeks. And I've talked to my, business manager about this, about the possibility of accepting something like Bitcoin, if people would want to do that. And yeah, I mean, again, if I want to get paid in something, I would prefer for it to be Bitcoin. That'd be pretty cool. But more than anything else, when you start, talking about things like the Lightning Network and stuff like that, I feel like it's just a way easier process. Like it cuts out like at least three steps in the process. It's like you're actually getting the money that being sent to you. There isn't this like month process or more of waiting for the money to hit your bank account or whatever. So I think it's something that if you want to work and get paid in the fastest way possible, like I don't know, why wouldn't you use the Lightning Network to get paid and run your business on it? I think that's probably a big concern for a lot of different businesses, whether it's one of my jiu-jitsu businesses or my online business or my podcast or whatever it is. I think it's just going to allow businesses to run so much more efficiently and so much quicker. And I get excited with those aspects of it. I don't know. I don't want to pretend that I know all about it, that I know all the implications of it, but to me, just looking from the outside in and knowing what I know at this point, it seems like it's going to help the functions of business tremendously, especially in regards to speed, and I'm sure regards to decision making and purchasing and saving and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be revolutionary. So and it already is, like it's changing the
Yeah.
way, I don't know, it changes my day to day in small ways, but more and more. So what do you think, like obviously we have El Salvador, but what do you think is the most bullish thing happening in Bitcoin right now?
Jeez. Oh, um, El Salvador obviously is the most fascinating thing to me. I think that, obviously we have this experiment going on. And, as of right now, if you look at, I think from when they purchased, Bitcoin, when they've been distributing it to the people to what the Bitcoin price is at right now, anytime someone can look at their wallet or see what they were paid in and see that that same money is now worth more than it was before, it is unbelievable. And, I guess on a global scale, I'm sure there's a lot of other countries that are waiting to see exactly how this plays out. especially in, other parts of, Central and Latin America, South America. A lot of their governments and a lot of their monies are kind of, relying on the US dollar. And if the US dollar is losing its purchasing power, then they're losing way more purchasing power, especially when you're talking about, I guess, millions of dollars of economic goods that are flowing in and out of their country. I mean, that affects, I'm sure, their bottom line tremendously. And as far as international business in general, I mean, why wouldn't you have one currency? One Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin, and going through, and the changing of monies, I think, is a complicated thing, and I think a lot of these countries have been, beaten down because of the U.S. dollar in a lot of ways, and I think that looking at El Salvador and seeing how it plays out is going to change a lot, especially if it's successful, which I think it will be. And especially in regards to how they're approaching their mining capabilities now, utilizing geothermal energy to mine Bitcoin is just insane. It feels like we're living in the future, and I think it's going to get a lot of other countries to think out of the box and look for ways to, if they're not having Bitcoin as its legal tender, to look for ways to mine it and enrich their country in that process.
Dude, it's so crazy. I just realized the other day, I mean, volcanic energy is geothermal energy. I've got like half of my family lives on farms that are, they have like an alternate heat supply that's geothermal. Like we had geothermal pipes dug like however many 100 feet into the ground. And I'm just like wondering, like, could I hook a miner up to that? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, let's get more of these.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Have you considered mining? Do you want to mine Bitcoin?
I have. I mean, I wish I started the process a long time ago. When it was easier. Now, I don't know. I guess it's possible for anyone to do it. I would love to, of course. I don't have the technical knowledge or information to be able to do it, I guess, efficiently. But I would love to learn. And I think that when you're seeing these kind of possibilities, come out of places like El Salvador, and whether it's, utilizing volcanoes and geothermal energy or solar or whatever it is, I think these are the things that I guess I was talking about earlier, where Bitcoin starts to spread itself out in a lot of different areas. And, what people may think about Bitcoin, thinking that, oh, it's ruining the environment and all this stuff, in the end will actually be potentially solely responsible for improving the environment. If there's a economic benefit to doing it on a grand scale, then you will see the environment improved, or you will see efforts at making things as efficient as possible. So that is pretty fascinating in and of itself. But I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who were in the early days of Bitcoin, who used to mine it and then spent it on stupid stuff early on when it wasn't worth very much. I had a Jiu Jitsu student of mine who was mining Bitcoin way back in the day and saying he was spending it on pizzas or whatever it was. And he's like, I laugh about it, but then when I really think about it, I just start crying, thinking about all the Bitcoin that I lost that I was spending because he thought it was, just going to be another thing. But here we are at 50,000.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I have the same concern. I'm like, I really want to mine. I think it would be fun. I think it would be, tons of upside, right? But the problem is to do it competitively. Like Bitcoin mining's quietly become like one of the most competitive businesses on the planet.
Yeah,
I feel like I'd have to join up with some kind of group or something.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what makes it, that pretty cool capitalist environment in a lot of ways. It's like, if you can't keep up, if you can't produce cheap energy or run your business efficiently, you're going to die out. Someone's going to take your place, for better or worse. And it's playing out not only nationally but globally, right? And it's fascinating stuff. And again, it's it's mind-blowing that more governments aren't looking for ways to make this a national issue. I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Because it's,
yeah, they might be discreetly. I mean, best case
yeah,
scenario, like the US government or the CIA or whatever has been like quietly accumulating Bitcoin just for our nation's sake.
right.
If you
You'd
look at the
think.
map,
I mean,
otherwise it's just El Salvador. We there are departments of the United States that have Bitcoin, but it's because they've seized it from criminals like,
right.
you
Yeah.
know, Ross or whoever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I also think like on I don't know, on a as far as I don't know, like let's say if you look at what happened with Afghanistan, right? Like if if you know I'm literally sending pallets of cash to Afghanistan, and you know handing it out to you know whoever you know locals that I'm working with or tribesmen that I'm working with that I'm you know trying to sway over to my side, or you know getting them to you know buy weapons or whatever. It's like that cash is now seized by you know some you know force that we didn't want to go in there, right? And you know property will be seized by someone who's going to be more powerful and more capable. Yeah, I think Bitcoin would be able to solve a lot of those issues. I mean, sending pallets of cash versus you know transferring Bitcoin over to someone. You know, I don't know. I would think that it would get governments and militaries to kind of think in deeper ways, but I don't know.
It's a little bit absurd. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand, most of Afghanistan chooses to use like tokens as their money, as opposed to we tend to use ledgers. I mean, you don't often
Yeah.
use physical cash anymore. It's kind
Right.
of like a very like bottom of the barrel. It's like I got to use quarters to like pay my laundry machine, but like
Right.
outside of that we use like ledgers for everything, and they're
Yeah.
such like a disparate almost non-society of tribes that it seems like they're just good with tokens. Like here's
Yeah.
gold. You know, the Middle East is one of the places where I think like gold was used and is still used the longest, like a gold coin
Right. Actual gold
actually.
coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to bring this like distributed ledger technology and say like, hey, you could use this and value this. It's like, dude, I want to go. Like, what can I can't do anything with Bitcoin. Like
Right. No, sure. Sure. You got to get them on board. But I guess from a practicality standpoint, you know, if you're dealing in millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, uh, you know, shipping pallets of cash on a C-130, you know, to Afghanistan is like silly, and you know, I don't know, but
it's incredibly silly. But it's also
yeah,
one of the ways, I mean, when we talk about printing money, there's a couple of things that are happening, and one of them is the central banks simply issue loans. I don't know if I don't know if people recognize this, but like when you take out a loan, you're bringing currency into existence, like on some level. And when you pay back a loan, you're destroying currency again. And when you default on a loan, that's just, I guess, extra money here to stay. I mean, that's like kind of a simplistic understanding of it. But one of the things that happens when we go to like liberate these other countries is we offload our inflation and we allow for like more kind of like tentacles and branches of government to be created and then be sustained. Like the money just funnels right through them. Those closest to the money printer thrive, the War Department thrives, and the recipients of all that cash, you know, nothing, it doesn't work out for them at all. And but the point is that the inflation is not felt at home for quite some time because the US dollar, we've dollarized so many other countries.
right.
It gets crazy. I This is what I was talking about. I'm not even a political person, but Bitcoin makes you interested like in how like you can't not become interested in how this stuff works.
Right. I mean, just money itself it's embedded in everything, and there's no question about it. It gets you to learn about these things, and the hope is that as people start moving to a Bitcoin standard, that hopefully a lot of those things will be untied. But you can see why there's so much competition for Bitcoin not to take over, for why people don't want Bitcoin to take over, because they essentially have a monopoly on this game. So it's going to be interesting how things play out. But I do think that you know the benefits of using Bitcoin far outweigh the current system. And eventually, I think technology will win, and a lot of things are going to be demonetized. And it's just going to take some more time, but it's happening.
Yeah, I think one of the examples of that you brought up earlier is like Bitcoin actually incentivizes renewable energy and renewable energy infrastructures to be built, which it turns out doesn't include solar and wind and all these things we were indoctrinated into thinking were like the future in kindergarten. Like, I don't know about you, but I remember actually having what felt like months long classes in elementary school where we just went over like the EPA, like renewable solar energy, like wind. And these are the most unreliable, like useless systems that have ever.
Right.
It's crazy. I think Bitcoin totally will expose them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's so mind blowing to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just ignorant, but the whole volcano thing is just like, this is a constant force. I mean, this is a consistent heat source that, fuels the planet, that is responsible for life in the planet. It's in the very center of the earth, and it comes out every once in a while. And there's different locations, and these are untapped amazing resources that could be used for energy. And I don't know, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it seems like that wouldn't have been considered, maybe because it's hard to transport from the volcano until Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is energy that can be sent over the internet. So you can mine remotely, you can harvest that geothermal energy, and you can send it to Siberia. You can send it wherever you want. It's crazy. Yeah, man. Do you have any closing remarks or advice you'd give to interested potential Bitcoiners?
I guess, I think a lot of things we've already mentioned, but I think the main thing is that a lot of people think they're too late in the game, and that Bitcoin is hard to understand. There's certainly a lot of things to understand, but I do think it's possible, and I think it's well worth the time. Your future is well worth the time. The work that you put in is well worth the time, and all those things, I think, are a huge benefit to improving not only your future, but the future of your family, the future of humanity, and doing that work and taking those first steps to learn about it, I think is huge. And the other thing I guess I should say is just a big thank you to the Bitcoin community for all the information that is out there and that I've learned, and what it's done to help me understand things much better. And it's a work in progress, and I'm doing my best to understand as much as I can. But I think it's an optimist's game. And I think that it brings an optimism and a positivity that is unlike a lot of other things out there. And for me, I think that's extremely important. And so I'm just very grateful for the information that I've learned, and the awesome community that's out there that's willing to share that information. Yep.